Hey everyone! So here we go, Chapter 11, Lesson 2. Okay, so we're starting off on page 489. So it says use the fraction strips to label thirds on the number line. Okay, well, this is exactly what we did back in Chapter 10. Okay, so if I have my number line, it's fallen a little bit on me. All right, so I've got my number line, and I have 0 and 1. What I really have is 0 thirds and 3 thirds. Okay, so I'm going to come and make a mark here, which would be my 1 third. Then I'll make a mark here, which is my 2 thirds. Okay, so that was part 1, making fraction strips, okay, with thirds. Then it says use the fraction strips to label sixths on the number line. So I'm going to make another number line, and I'm going to try to keep it as even as possible, because I know that's what your book has. So we'll go like 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need one more. 6. All right, so now I have 6. So my first tick is 1/6, and just like that, we're going to add 1 unit fraction each time that I'm going forward. 4, 6, and 5, 6. Here we go. So then it says use the number lines to complete the equation. 1 third is equal to what fraction over 6, okay? So actually for this to make sense, I have to fix where I stuck my 1 third. All right. So now that I have my 2 number lines right above each other, okay, and I'm looking at what 1 third equals to, I'm going to be here at my 1 third, and I'm just going to draw a line down. Okay, again, my tick marks aren't perfect, so this should, if it's even in your book, which it is, or when you draw them it should be, it will make more sense. Okay, but if I look at both horizontally directly above one another, 1 third is equivalent to 2/6. So how can you tell whether fractions are equivalent using a number line? Well, equivalent fractions represent the same point on the number line, all right? So if I'm looking at this, I moved the same distance between 0 and 1 third as I did between 0 and 2/6. Okay? Now again, these solving for equivalent fractions are always easier if you do have your fraction strips. They are available in your textbook or online to print. So if those are useful to you, please use them. All right. So that's 489. Let's move forward with 490. And just like in chapter 10, where we got an example that described in steps how we need to solve for plotting fractions on a number line, it does the same thing here in chapter 11. So you can use a number line to find equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions represent the same point on a number line. So example, use the number line to find an equivalent fraction for 3/4. So I'm going to put 3/4 down here because I want something equivalent. So I want a fraction that also equals 3/4, okay? So step 1, plot it on the number line, okay? Well, this is helpful for you, at least in this example, because it gives you the number line with all of your tick marks in it. So I'm going to go ahead and draw mine. 1, 2, 3. So I have 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4, and then 1 whole, which is also equal to 4/4. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that just like we did in chapter 10, okay? There's nothing different at all about step 1, plotting your fraction, okay? Now, step 2, divide the number line into eighths and label each tick mark to show eighths. Okay. So it gives you a printed fraction, or it gives you a little fraction strip there. And we have eighths, okay? And then I'll draw my number line. Okay, so this is 0 and 1. And if you look, I first separated my fraction strip, since I'm drawing it, into fourths so I can make sure that my fourths are lined up. And then I will divide them into eighths. So just bear with me while I do that. All right. So now each of these is 1/8. All right. So now we're looking at what we have in your book. All right. So if I'm looking at my number line, I'm going to start doing these in different colors. Maybe that will help. So if I'm following this line right here, I'm at 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. Okay, and then I'm going to do my eighths in a different color. So it gives us this tick right here is 1/8. This 1/4 is also 2/8. Then we have 3/8, 4/8. So this is 5/8. 3/4 is also 6/8. And then we have 7/8, 1 whole, or 8/8. Or 4/4. Okay, so that's just the labeling. I know it looks like a lot, it sounds like a lot. So here, okay, I need to know what is 3/4 equal to. Well, my 3/4 is right here, okay? So what I'm gonna do to help me is I'm gonna just go ahead and shade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've hit my 3/4, and I'm going to write that fraction. So 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8. All right. If you look at the fraction strips that I made, I shaded in 8 of them to equal my 3/4 line. Okay. So it says the fractions that name the same point are 3/4 and 6/8. So 3/4 equals 6/8. Okay. All right. Looking at number 1 with the show and grow, it looks like they filled those in for you. All right. So on that number line, the top ticks, on the top side of the ticks, they have it divided into sixths. And then on the bottom side of the ticks, they have it divided into thirds. Okay, so we've got our number line. We have 0, 1. We have a half here, which is 3/6. And then we've got 1 here, which is 1/3 or 2/6. And then another halfway is, right, 1/3, 2/3, or 4/6, and then we have a small one right here, which is 5/6, and then another one right here, which is 1/6. Okay, so the bottom are my thirds, the tops are my sixths. So I have 2/3 is equal to what fraction? So I'm going to come over to my 2/3. I see it. I circle it. What tick is it sharing with? right here. It is sharing with my 4/6 tick. So 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. Now, when you're looking at number 2, okay, you're going to have to draw that in yourself. So for number 2, got my number line. I have 0. I have 1. And then I have a tick here that says 1/4. And I have a tick here that says 3/4. And then I'm given a tick in the middle with a plot. Okay? First, I'm going to solve for my top. Okay, so my top, I have 0/4, 1/4, 3/4, and 4/4. So process of elimination, this halfway point is 2/4. Okay? When I'm looking at the bottom, looks like it's kind of more split like that. So when I'm looking at the bottom, if 2/4 is equal to just one section, what does the bottom section have to be split into? 1/2. So we have 2/4 is equal to 1/2. Okay. So when you're looking at like 3 and 4, the first thing you need to always do is solve for your tick marks, okay? And that's what we did here on this one. We solved for our top tick marks and then our bottom, because we saw that our halfway point was at the 2/4. So if this were a square, what would equal 2/2 shaded in of my 4ths? 1/2 would, okay? So that's the same what you're doing with 3 and 4. When you're looking at 5 and 6, same thing. You need to count your tick marks to solve, okay? So you'll count the bottom half, which it looks like for number 5, it already gives you 2/4 and 3/4, which is awesome, okay? So you know those are 4ths. And then the top, you just have to keep going. So it looks like there are, how many equal shares? It looks like there are 8 equal shares, okay? So your top fraction would be 2/8, your bottom fraction is 1/4, and what does it mean with the point in between? It means they are equivalent together. So 2/8 equals 1/4, okay? So it's all about lining up your number line and filling in those ticks. I think printing out the fraction strips would be super helpful, especially in this situation. Or if you're getting confused with having so many numbers on one, go back to what we did in the beginning of this video, back to looking at like 489, where I drew 2 number lines right above each other, and I compared them that way. Okay, so that's what we did with even on 289 and 290 is where I drew the 2 fraction bars above each other. Okay, so you are always welcome to do that if that helps you as well. You guys got it. Don't stress about it, okay? I know you can do it.